Well, howdy folks, and welcome to this episode of Vern's Misadventures. So currently we are in Windows 10. Well, let's just go back in time and we'll talk about an 8-bit computer that I had was my first computer. How about that? So when I was a little kid, Dad got a Challenger 1P. It's made by Ohio Scientific. And this here, as you can see here, this is pretty much what the computer looked like. It had a metal case. It was kind of a tannish color. Not nearly as fancy and pretty and cool as the Apple II or some of the other computers of the era, but it didn't have the high price either. So you could get a Challenger 1P for around $350 to $450, somewhere in there. And you pick it up. It's got 4K of RAM. You can plug in some more ICs right there on the motherboard and expand it to 8K of RAM. And it had 8K of basic in ROM. From time to time, I look to see if anybody's got any for sale on eBay that are cheap or something. Maybe they got one doesn't work or something might be cheap. Kind of that whole thing. We all want to relive our youth. We want to get some of the things we used to have that we let slip through our fingers as the time ran. And then later on, you realize, man, I wish I would have kept that, right? I wish I would have had the option to keep it. It was never mine. It was always Dad's computer. And, our lives changed a little bit, and time went on, and situations, circumstances changed, and not real sure whatever happened to it, honestly. I guess he sold it to a friend or something. But it went down the road, and that was that. But I would like to have another one someday. So I was looking around on the internet. I was Googling, and I come across this video of somebody checking out a Challenger 1P emulator. Now, an emulator is something that allows your computer to emulate or pretend to be something it's not, like a Challenger 1P, for instance. If you look here, I've got emulators there's a virtual one. I didn't install this on Windows. I had it on Mac OS for a while, but I don't even have that right now. But that's for the Apple II. And then I do have Vice installed on here, which will take care of the Commodore lineup. It'll do everything from the Commodore PET through the Commodore VIC-20, the 64, the 128, and I think even some newer ones past that. But as far as the C1P went, I had no idea that there was an emulator out there where you could still play with the old C1P. So I watched this guy's video, and he left a link to the C1P emulator. And let's see, if we refresh the page. So when you first turned on the Challenger 1P, this is pretty much what you'd see on your screen of your television or monitor if you had a monitor. And it was just a bunch of garbage that would be on there. And then you'd have to press the break button. So you press break, and you're presented with this question. DCWM, well, that's disk, cold, warm, or monitor for machine language, right? So we didn't have the disk. Like I say, we had the base model with 4K of RAM, and we used a cassette tape player to save and or load our programs with. So to answer this question, now warm would be if you had a program that kind of lock up or something, and you just press break to kind of do a soft reset. That would leave your software in RAM, so if you went back to it, you could list it. And I'll demonstrate that here in a minute. But when you first turn it on, you have to do a cold start. So that's going to clear all the RAM, all the garbage out of the RAM. Then it asks for memory size. You could put a number to reserve some memory, like if you had a machine language component to a program you're going to be working with in BASIC, and you don't want BASIC to override it, you could put a smaller memory size than what you have. And then a terminal width, you could put a different terminal width if you wanted to. Or you just press enter on these questions and it would go to the defaults. So here we go. This is what you'd be greeted with when you had 8K RAM in the machine. Now my dad, he actually built his own expansion card for it. Now you could buy one. They had one for sale. It was kind of expensive. And Dad liked to build things, tinker around. So he built a little interface card, right? And the interface card plugged into the S100 bus. So you plug that into the S100 bus in one slot, And we had another card that had a memory. It was a RAM card, right? And it had, he didn't have it completely populated, but basically we had expanded to 13K of RAM total in the machine time it was all said and done. Um, so it's pretty neat to watch him tinker around with them computers and soldering up boards, and that they would actually work and do things when he was done was truly amazing to watch as a kid, you know. And even as an adult it would be, honestly. Back to the emulator. So one of the things you can do with computers is you can run other people's software, and this emulator gives you the option to do that. You can go through this list and you can load these programs and all this and all that. As cool as that is, to me, that's not the beauty of these old machines. The beauty of a machine like this, you turn it on and it's like, okay, what do you want to do today, right? And you're ready to write a program right there from word go, you know. And I always loved that about them. You're such a creative outlet, you know. And so the Challenger 1P didn't really have kind of like the like your Commodore 64 and all that had a clear screen command you could run. I think it's character string 147 on the Commodore 64 to clear the screen. It's a little machine language deal that clears the screen, but there was none built in to the Challenger 1P. So easiest way to clear the screen. Now you can write a machine language program and then call it with the x equals user x command here, but I haven't done that in a very long time, and I'd have to read the manual, and you're not going to wait for that. So let's just move on with this here, huh? So I don't really know how many lines of physical we have, but 32 should be more than enough to clear the screen. So we'll just do print : next. So this here is just going to print. It's just going to print empty lines 32 times, right? That's a for next loop right there. So if we ran that, so line 10, of course, is a remark or a comment. More modern terminology is to call it a comment, but it's a remark. That's what RAM stands for. 30 input. What is your name? Now you don't have to put the question mark because it's an input and it's going to be provided by BASIC. But you do have to assign a variable to hold the answer. And since we're going to be looking for text, we've got to use a string. So we'll put, oh, well, QString. Now, QString it is then, since I pressed the wrong button. All right. And then 40, we could say, have it say hello to us. So we'd say print hello, comma, space, and then that, and then semicolon, QString, semicolon, and an exclamation point. How about that? And we'll close that off. So let's run our program. What is your name? My name is Vern. Oops. Now, I accidentally pressed Shift V to make a capital V, but I forgot. In the emulator, that doesn't really work. So you just type your letters. And another thing in the emulator is just exactly like the machine was. If you do a backspace in the emulator, which would be a Control O on the actual machine, you see down here at the bottom it says Control O. That would actually delete that. So that deleted the F as far as the answer went, but it didn't take it off the screen. So just put like a underscore deal there. And that's exactly what the Challenger 1P would do, the way I remember it from 40 years ago or more. So how can we make it do something a little more interesting with our name? Well, how about if we did this? We could do, so we take 40 and we replace it with how about for x equals 1, 2, and then we're going to go to the length of, and that's going to be QString. So however many characters long QString is, we're going to make a loop for that. And then 50, we could do print tab x. That's our variable x. For some reason, I always default to I whenever I write loops or for next. It's not a good practice to use the same variable all the time. You should really try to use unique variables for different things. So this would be for x equals 1 to the length of q string, which of course is whatever you input to the question. And then we're going to put tab x, right, semicolon, and we're going to put mid string. Oh my goodness, learn how to type, Vern. So mid string, and then that's going to be q string, comma I, comma 1. Then I'll explain what that does here in a minute. And then 60, and we'll just do next. Now it's going to assume we want to next the x one, the for x loop. If we had a nested loop, we'd have to specify x, but in this version of BASIC, on the Challenger 1P, it assumes you mean the one you've got working. So you don't have to specify unless you have nested loops. So let's list that, see what we actually wrote, and we'll go through it. So we're going to do a loop from 1 to the length of whatever you typed. Then we're going to print, and we're going to space out. Each letter is going to be on a new line, and it's going to space out that much further with a tab, right? So whatever the value of x is, it's going to put that many spaces. Then the mid string thing is going to take one letter at a time of the string, right? And it's going to take whichever letter. It's going to start with the first one, so that's why the 1 at the end, right? And then it's going to go I, which I mistyped it. See, I told you I always default to I. So I've got to redo the whole thing because there's no way to edit a line on the Challenger 1P. So, all right, no big deal. So print tab, so tab x, semicolon, midstream. So the $sign means string. And then we're going to put q string, comma, x, comma 1. And that should work. Let's list it. So let's just run it and we'll see what it comes up with. What is your name? My name is Big Daddy. And there it is. So that's what that other code did. It's going to go through the string, and one letter at a time it's going to print it along with the tab. So it prints it in a kind of a diagonal line. I always liked that one. I thought it was pretty cool. So let's list. And then we can do 70. We can do print. P. And I don't have a whole lot of character width on each row, so let's not overload it. So we can go to the next line. 80. Print. Display. Again, display. And then we'll call that'll be good for that line, I guess. And then we go 90, print the following characters. And we close that off, right? 100. So it has 255 characters to work with here. And so what we could do is write a loop. So we go, I'm just going to use I because I'm going to screw up and want to complete the loop as I anyway, so I'll just use I. For I equals 0, because 0 is a character, right, to 255. And 120, print character string of I. And we'll do it semicolon so that it does it in rows rather than columns. And then 130, we just do next. So there's our program. Let's run it. What is your name? Duvern. Look at that. So there are the characters. For some reason, and I don't understand it. Maybe it's a problem with the emulator, and I think that it is. It's not printing any characters after 9. Because see, the other half of the Enterprise should be here as character 10, and I'm not seeing all of the characters here. So whatever the deal is, I mean, you know, that could be a deficiency in the emulator or something. But as I recall, and granted it's been 40 years, I do recall that you could do that and it would print out all the characters. So let's see, let's list our program. So I guess we'll finish up our little demo here and my little conversation about the Challenger 1P and this really cool emulator that just runs as a web page. So take 140. We're just going to use I because I'm going to mess it up in the example anyway. Like I said before, it's not really a good practice to always use the same variable. And in fact, we're going to run into that as we go. We're going to have to change for the delay, but we'll do it this one because I know I'm going to mess up and it's just going to take more time to fix it. So we'll just do it this way. So for I equals 53,400, and I don't remember the exact addresses, but this will work, to about 54,140, I think is right, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now these are going to be the addresses from the upper left corner of the screen to the lower right corner. And as I said, you know, it's been quite a few years and I could be wrong about the numbers. But it should work. So there's our range, 150. We are going to poke I, so the value of I, with character number 9. And we are going to poke the space just to the right of I, which would be I plus 1. And we're going to poke that with character 10. Now a colon is just basically writes a new command after the first one, right? So you don't have to write separate lines for every single thing you try to do here. And when it's a short command, it makes sense to just do multiples on a line. In some respects, in others, considering the limited editing abilities of this, it would make more sense to keep them short, and that way if you had to change something, you wouldn't have to retype so much. So I guess there's more than one way to look at that. 160, now we're going to go ahead and write a delay, and we're going to set a variable, and we're going to ask the user to enter a number. So let's do an input. And we're going to say enter a number greater than 1. And we do a semicolon, and we'll use X for that. The problem that I have with this is it's not going to be a good plan. And the reason that it's not going to be a good plan is we don't want to ask the question 100 times, no, 1,000 times. So we're going to want to move this elsewhere. But at least we've typed it once and we have a good model. So first thing we'll do is get rid of line 160. So you do that by just doing that. So where would be a good place to put it? Definitely before the loop, huh? That's about 135. Let's throw it in at 135. So where you put things is very important when you're programming. Obviously, you don't want to ask the question 1,000 times. Once will do, at least once per run, and this should make that happen. So let's list it and see where we ended up. So now we'll go 160, and what we'll do is we'll set a little delay here, and we want to do that because as it moves forward across the screen, we're going to want to delete the trailing character, which of course will be the 9, which we're poking to I. The leading character is 10, which is the front of the Enterprise. What we'll do next is we'll go ahead and write a quick for next loop to serve as a delay for X. No, we can't use X. We'll use D. So for D, forward or for D. So for D equals 1 to X. That's why we couldn't use X. We're using it there. And then just next. So it's going to count to the number and then just complete the loop. And that's going to slow it down a little bit. And then 170, we will poke I, whatever the value of I is, we'll poke it with a empty space, which is the character 32. And then 180, I can see now we're going to have to fix line 160. I messed it up again. We will next I. And because it's a nested loop, we're going to have to specifically say we want to next D. So let's list 160. So we're going to just start over again, because there's no way to edit the line, colon, and then we got to specify next D. And that way we complete our delay, the loop on that, before we complete the loop to move the Enterprise across the screen. So I'm pretty sure we should be good to go. Let's list real quick, take a quick look, and then we'll run the program. Yeah, fun. So again, Shift R, Control O, and run. Alright, wants to know my name, and I'll just say Vern. So we're going to enter a number greater than 1, and to speed things along, I'm just going to put a 2. No, I'm going to put a 20, because I want you to see this. And so here comes the Enterprise. It's flying down the screen there, and it's eating the characters on the screen as it goes. Okay, so you see here at the end when it finished the program, because the last thing we told it to do is to clear out the back end of the ship. We only end up with half of the ship, the front half. So let us do this. Let's list. You see the line 170 where we poke I, 32. If we do a conditional statement, so an if-then basically, so if we do 170 and change that to if I is less than, we're going to go to 54,140. So at the end of the loop, I will equal 54,140. So if I is less than 54,140, then you can poke I, 32. So as long as it's less than 54,140, we'll go ahead and replace the back half of the ship with an empty space or an empty character. However, once it is equal to 54,140, that condition will not be met and this will not happen. And when it ends, we'll have the entire Enterprise on the screen. So let's run. The name is XXYY. Okay, we're just going to speed things along by pressing a 2. So that's a shorter delay. You see how much faster it goes across the screen. And so you have to balance, speed with ability to actually see it. So it's nice that it goes fast, but at the same time you can't really see it very well. So if it went a little slower, it'd be easier to see. And there you go. We're into the program and we got the whole Enterprise. Yeah. So what all did we cover here? We did some loops. We did input. We did prints, we did tabs, we did some of the tools you can use to work with strings, namely the mid string. Oh, I guess we could do one more thing, show how that's done. That's pretty. 190. We'll input. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So we're going to do a Control O. We'll just use the backspace button. How about that? And like I say, the input statement covers the question mark, so you don't put a question mark. You do, however, have to put a semicolon and a variable. So let's just go with R string for run. How about that? So we're looking for an answer that someone might type yes, they might type no, they might type Y or in, right? And so what we're going to want to do is decipher it. And using the left string, we can just get the first character typed. So we'll go if left string, and that is R string, comma 1, right? We don't have to put the I or anything for a loop because we're not doing that, but you want the first character. And that's kind of strange because in a lot of programming, the first thing you're going to do is a 0. But in this version of BASIC, you use 1 for the first character in a string. Equals Y, then, and then you can just type run. Or we can do go to 10. But since I'm not entirely sure 10 was our first line anymore and it's not on the screen, I'm just going to type run. I think that'll work if memory serves. Okay, so if that condition's not met, it'll just end the program. Now you don't have to type this, but it doesn't hurt to put it in there either. We just end. So it won't make it to 210 if you type yes or Y. So let's run it and make sure it works. My name is Mr. Tibbs. Number greater than 1. Well, we'll put a 2 just to speed things along. So now the Enterprise will eat the text. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, look at that. Want to run it again? And if we put yes, it should run it again. Ginger, that's my dachshund's name. A number greater than 1, we'll do a 2 again. So this time we'll answer no and see if it ends. I could also demonstrate yes, but I will just assume you don't really want to see that. And then we just put no for in. And it ends the program. How about that? So there is the program. And that was fun, you know? It was fun to use your head, to use your imagination, and just come up with something. I mean, we didn't have a plan. I didn't have a script. I just sat down here and just imagined some stuff we could do to kind of show off what this thing can do. And it's got a lot of really advanced functions. It's got trigonometry functions and math functions, and it can really do quite a bit of stuff. And if you scroll down here, you can read more about it. The Challenger 1P, I think it even has the original documentation, which is really cool. The graphics manual, user's manual. Dad had all these in a binder, the old 3-ring binder that he had all this in. What a trip down memory lane, huh? Hey, if y'all enjoyed this, click that like button, will you? And if you want to see more of my videos, click that subscribe button. Ring that bell for notifications. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close out here, and I want to thank you for cruising down memory lane with me and playing around with the old Challenger 1P. I'll put a link to this website so you can check out these emulators and everything if you're interested in that. And hey, with that, we'll let you go. Y'all take care. We'll see you in the next one.